Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the dense, frankly fascinating chemistry of oxygen-containing organic compounds and see exactly how they build our world. You know, to truly grasp how our physical reality is constructed, we really have to look closely at these foundational building blocks. Every time you take a medicine, use a plastic container, or even just breathe, you're relying on the fundamental chemistry we're about to explore today. We're going to look at the structures, the naming rules, the reactions, and the real-world applications of these fundamental molecules.
Now, to bridge the gap between textbook chemistry and our actual daily lives, we kind of have to start by asking what invisible chemical engines are powering these everyday items. I mean, what do nail polish remover, vinegar, and your favorite perfume actually have in common? Well, the answer lies in their molecular anatomy. They're all driven by specific functional groups that contain a carbon-oxygen double bond.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll meet the oxygen family, go over their anatomy and naming rules, see how we actually make these molecules, look at their reactions and behaviors, figure out how to identify them, and finally, wrap up with some real-world chemistry. Let's dive right in.
Part 1. Let's meet the oxygen family.
Okay, looking at the core features laid out here, notice how they all share one major foundational trait, a central carbonyl group. But here's what we're really discovering together. It's the subtle differences in their atomic attachments that completely dictate their chemical identities. Aldehydes feature the CHO group, ketones have that CO group sandwiched securely right between two carbon chains, and carboxylic acids contain the COOH carboxyl group. It's honestly mind-blowing when you realize that just swapping out a single hydrogen or oxygen atom can completely transform a delicate, sweet-smelling perfume into a harsh industrial solvent, or, turn a standard preservative into a fiercely sharp acid.
Moving on to Part 2. Anatomy and naming rules.
Let's zoom in on the carbonyl group itself. The carbonyl carbon is sp2 hybridized, which gives it this flat, trigonal planar geometry. But the absolute crucial point here, it's the highly polar nature of that carbon-oxygen double bond. Think of it like a constant molecular tug-of-war for electrons. Oxygen is highly electronegative. It's super greedy, right? It heavily pulls the electron density toward itself, leaving the carbon atom essentially stripped and electron deficient. And that brilliantly illustrates why this carbon acts as a highly reactive electrophilic center. It's practically begging for a nucleophile to come along, share some electrons, and attack it.
When it comes to naming these guys, the IUPAC rules are actually quite elegant and logical. You simply find the longest carbon chain containing the functional group and swap out that alkane suffix. So the E becomes Al for aldehydes, turning a basic molecule like HCHO into methanol. The E becomes one for ketones, making CH3COCH3 propanone. And for our acidic friends, it becomes oic acid, giving us ethanoic acid for CH3COOH. Once you see the pattern, you're going to be able to name almost any of these compounds right on sight.
All right, Part 3, making the molecules. Let's explore the oxidation pipeline, because this really shows how we construct these molecules from scratch in the lab. This sequence cleanly shows the flowchart of it all. If you take a primary alcohol and subject it to a very controlled oxidation using a gentle reagent like PCC, you get an aldehyde. But I gotta warn you, this is a delicate, high-wire balancing act. Aldehydes are highly sensitive. If you don't perfectly control that oxidation, the aldehyde's going to slip right past you, oxidize even further, and boom, you end up with a carboxylic acid. It's a direct, sequential pipeline, and it really demands precision.
Meanwhile, if you start with a secondary alcohol and oxidize it, well, you'll consistently yield a ketone. Why? Because the carbon carrying the OH group in a secondary alcohol is attached securely to two other carbon atoms. It acts like a structural wall, so the oxidation just stops dead right at the ketone stage. It's completely unable to push any further down the line into an acid.
That brings us to Part 4, reactions and behaviors.
So, if we pit these molecules against each other, why is one so highly reactive while the other is stubbornly unyielding? Let's figure this out. Aldehydes are highly reactive and super easy to oxidize because they simply have less steric hindrance. They're out in the open, exposed, making them an easy target for a chemical attack. Ketones, on the flip side, firmly resist oxidation. Those two bulky alkyl groups attached to a ketone's carbonyl carbon actually push electron density toward the center. This significantly reduces that positive charge and makes the ketone way less attractive to any potential attackers.
Now, for carboxylic acids, their behavior is entirely defined by their strength as an acid, and this strong acidity comes down to a really fascinating concept called resonance stabilization. When a carboxylic acid releases a proton, it forms what's called a carboxylate ion. This newly formed ion is incredibly stable because it seamlessly shares its negative charge back and forth between its two oxygen atoms. And because of this incredible stability, the molecule is more than happy to literally evict that proton. This resonant stabilization is exactly why acetic acid, which we all know as vinegar, has that notoriously sharp, sour, acidic bite.
Part 5. Identifying the compounds.
Welcome to the chemical interrogation room. We often need to figure out exactly who is who in a blind lab setting, and the TFS trick is going to be your absolute best chemical lie detector. To remember how to accurately detect an aldehyde on an exam or in the lab, just anchor your memory to the Tollens, Fehlings, and Schiff tests, TFS. Because aldehydes are so incredibly easy to oxidize, these three specific tests exploit that exact weakness to force a highly visible, undeniable chemical reaction.
Let's look at the most famous interrogation method of the bunch, Tollens test. When you introduce an aldehyde to Tollens reagent, the aldehyde is rapidly oxidized and the silver ions in the reagent are reduced to solid metallic silver. And you guys, the visual observation is absolutely stunning. The aldehyde will beautifully coat the inside of the glass test tube with a brilliant, crystal clear, reflective silver mirror. A ketone, however, it stubbornly resists oxidation. So under those exact same conditions, it'll give a negative result and sit there doing absolutely nothing.
Conversely, let's say you need to positively interrogate a specific type of ketone, a methyl ketone. That's a carbonyl group attached directly to at least one methyl or CH3 group. Well, the iodoform test acts as the perfect detector here. By reacting the methyl ketone with iodine and a base, you get a distinct, bright yellow precipitate of iodoform. It's a rapid, highly visual, and super reliable way to confirm exactly what molecular suspect you're working with.
And finally, Part 6. Real-world chemistry.
Carboxylic acids are the absolute workhorses of industry. When interacting with the broader world, they very predictably follow the Mabe rule. They react with metals, alkalis, bases, and they undergo esterification. This deep predictability is exactly what makes them such an essential, reliable backbone for the global polymer, food preservation, and synthetic materials industries.
Which actually brings us to one of the most beloved and frankly aromatic reactions in all of organic chemistry, esterification. This happens when a carboxylic acid and an alcohol combine, usually in the presence of concentrated sulfuric acid, to create esters. Esters are chemically famous for giving off deeply pleasant, fruity, and sweet smells. So if you've ever enjoyed the complex scent of a high-end designer perfume, or even just the bright artificial flavoring in a piece of fruit candy, you're directly experiencing the real-world magic of an esterification reaction.
From the formaldehyde carefully preserving biological samples in a research lab, to the acetone quickly wiping away your nail polish at home, to the acetic acid preserving our foods as vinegar, these functional groups are constantly, tirelessly working in the background of our modern lives. They're the invisible chemical engines driving the textile industry, the pharmaceutical world, and even the complex, beautiful metabolic pathways inside your own body right at this very second.
So the biggest takeaway from our deep dive today is this. The intricate rules of organic chemistry aren't just rigid formulas meant for exams. They fundamentally dictate the sights, smells, and physical materials of our entire reality. The next time you smell a sweet perfume, use a durable plastic container, or taste the sharp tang of vinegar, I want you to pause and ask yourself, how many of these incredible invisible compounds have you already encountered today? And what exactly are they silently doing behind the scenes? Keep observing and keep questioning. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.